Woman, you are the holy grail, the Magdalene. Woman, no need to search any longer. The priestess.
Welcome to the Woman Arising podcast, hosted by Cathy Hartenstein and Zeffi Devi, where we elevate and celebrate inspiring women on the rise. In this podcast, we talk to women from all walks of life about their soul's journey, the obstacles they overcame, and how they embody their feminine power. We hope to elevate women's place in the world, showcase their contributions, and provide inspiration for all women to rise to their fullest potential. Today, our guest is Ingrid Kincaid, an internationally known author, teacher, and mentor who calls herself an irreverent wise woman, a storyteller, a troublemaker, and an eccentric creative who has lived many lifetimes by moving between the realms of the real and the imaginary. While there are no letters after her name, she has earned degrees in wisdom, intuition, and determination by being curious and always asking questions. When others see a wall, Ingrid opens a window. Life for her is an adventure. She provides spiritual counseling and intuitive guidance, both in person and virtually. And when she's not traveling, she lives nestled at the confluence of two rivers and in sight of two volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest. Welcome, Ingrid. It is our true pleasure to have you here today. We're excited to learn from your earned wisdom and experience and hear how you've helped women embrace their truth.
Welcome, Ingrid. Thank you for coming on with us and sharing all the knowledge that I learned from you. Well, not all of it, but part of the knowledge that I learned with you in Sedona, Arizona. And I'm very excited for you to be part of us and, and join us in this journey that we have created. So when you heard, and we send you the invitation of Women Arising in the Word, what did you think? What was the emotion behind it? What you felt? Is anything came on for you that you like to share with
As always, it was very beautiful timing. I just believe in life as flow and things come and go. We just need to pay attention to the little messages. So it was exciting because I am in the final stages of the editing and publication of my next book, which is titled "Women of the Always." And so this was like, oh, this is perfect. This is like perfect timing. So here I am. That's why I said yes. I love to talk about the power of women, and I love also to be able to bring my voice into the conversation, because I do consider myself an elder. I'm closer to age 80 than I am to 70. So I think we need some more voices, elder voices. And I get a little frustrated with these young women, what I call young women in their 50s, saying that they're crones or hags. It's like, honey, you don't have a clue. You don't get to do that until you get to be 80 years old. Anyway, that's so it's always fun for me to come from that place of like, yeah, when you live a long time, you do live a lot of lifetimes, and for us as women to live to that place, and then to share it, and so
I agree. By the way, you don't look 80, and
I'm not 80 yet. I'm
almost.
I'll be 77 this year, so I think, like I said, I'm closer to 80, and it's really sobering, to imagine, just to imagine having the gift of being able to live a long life, and to really embrace it. I think what I've observed and so often is that we're so focused and obsessed with eternal youth and never growing old, and I think our young people deserve to see honest faces. And this is missing in our community of elders, where there's so much modification and alteration of our faces and of our being, that we it's like we see something, but it doesn't match up with the energy that we live in. I love to encourage that, to embrace, to stay healthy and youthful in our spirit, but to allow ourselves to actually be who we are.
Mm.
That to me is really, really, I think, vital.
I really love that idea of like women arising as being who we are and really allowing ourselves to be who we are and to go on that journey. Because a lot of the times, there's a lot of energy coming at us about who we are supposed to be, but to really embrace that truth of who we are and step on that path, I think is very powerful. Was there any other things that when you heard that term woman arising that it meant to you?
I find that in the spiritual communities today, there's a lot of focus on high vibration, raising your consciousness, leaving your body, all this stuff that denies our connection and the necessity of our connection to the earth. And so part of the book, The Women of the Always, is that we have to be rooted in wisdom. And what I believe is a big part of the imbalance today is we don't have any roots. We've been cut off from the root because we've been cut off from the mother. We've been cut off from the body of the earth. We've been cut off from the place of darkness, where the roots are fed. And so for me, this concept of woman arising was like, yes, because what's happened is we need to grow up from our roots again, not disconnect. Because you cut a tree down, nothing can happen with it, except we burn it as fuel or build a house. But we're living, we're vital and vibrant, and we need to rise up from our roots. And I think that in the book, If Women Rose Rooted, I think that this is the same kind of concept, that we as women, because we are the birthers, and that's not, whether we have children or not, that's not what I mean. We carry in our body the connection with the earth. The earth is the mother. The earth births us. She feeds us, but she comes from the place of the root. And so I thought, well, this is exciting. Woman arising is really us growing up from the roots again. And if necessary, inviting some of the women that are out there floating around, bring them back down to earth and reconnect with each other that way. And that's our strength. Our strength is when we stay connected to the earth. This other stuff is up in the mind, up in the head. It's lovely, but it's like having branches of a tree, but it's not connected to anything. So that's excitement for me. It's like, yes, we need our roots back, and we can't rise up, not float away. We need to stay rooted in the earth, and then that's the way that we're going to return the balance.
And I love the image of just coming up from the roots, and that the roots is the thing that supports us rising, and that relationship with the earth is so essential, because that is part of that sort of feminine, powerful energy that you're describing. So thank you for that. It was great to read your bio and learn a little bit about you, Ingrid. And I love the way that you describe yourself, and it's just such a beautiful, vivid idea of who you are. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your life's journey and sort of how you kind of found this deep wisdom and path that you're on.
Like I said, lots of lifetimes. That opens up a whole story. I was very happily, busily, this is kind of starting in the middle. I say The stories are a circle. You have to just ask yourself, where did you enter the story? The pivotal point for me was I was a very successful real estate broker in San Francisco Bay Area. Started in the 80s, sold real estate for 30 years. So one day while sitting at an open house, there was a little pouch on the coffee table. I'm curious. I'm always looking into things and opening up bags. And so I dumped out the contents of this little bag. And it was a bag of, it contained rune stones. They were at that time were made from clay. I think it was probably from Ralph Blum's book, Runes. And something needed to come out.
Something burst out. That's right.
And when I did that, it was a very interesting experience because it was all of a sudden in this movement was this pile of stones that had markings on them. And in that moment, I said to myself, I know what this is. And following that very quickly was, and I know what this means. And what I did was I said to myself, no, you don't. I'm having an argument. There's a lot of us in here, right? No, you don't. And this could really mess up your life. And then the other voice said, yes, you do know, and you can't go back. No, I don't know. I had this little dialogue going on. And I stuffed these things back in this pouch and pulled the string very tight so that they were in there and set it aside. And looking back and what I know to be true was that was an opening. I opened the bag to what I call my four mothers, not just the ancestors, to the four mothers from the far north, the grandmothers from the glaciers and the dark and the cold. And that what I said that I knew was something that I was remembering, because it wasn't anything I was interested in or that I'd studied or that I was even caring about, because like I said to myself, this experience is going to mess up your life. And it did. It turned everything upside down, but it didn't mess up my life. It actually gave me an opening to live. And so backtracking through all that, I had been raised in a very strict cultish Christian family. I, had traveled all over with my husband, and my children lived in Europe. There was just this really full, interesting, unusual life, but it wasn't, there was no place in it for something that was that mysterious or magical or remembering. And that was, I would say, that landed in the middle of fertile ground. That was an acorn that fell off the tree and landed in the fertile ground and took root. And it wouldn't let me go. It didn't let me go. And so in that, and it's interesting for me right now, because in writing the Women of the Always book, which is my fourth book, the other books have been about the runes. And what I realized, truthfully, just in the last couple of weeks, is that I was called to work with the runes because of the voice that I have, the strength of the voice that I have, the personality that I have, my willingness to do that. And it was to bring into this beautiful system of ancient wisdom, to bring the women back into this system, because it's been so corrupted and perverted and misused through the male dominant, what I call Viking chest thumping male macho stuff. That's not what it is. It's this ancient earth wisdom that is spoken through these symbols. And it's one of the few pieces of wisdom that comes to us from the ancestry of the North. That to me is important because as women, we're absent. And so looking backward now is that I was given the gift of that remembering so that I could speak about and teach and write about this ancient wisdom system that is rooted in the earth and that is always, without exception, about life and death. And that doing that, then now the book about women of the always is kind of like the capstone or the culmination of this work. And I use this wisdom in everything that I teach, all my classes, all my work. That's how I came to know Zeffi, is that through teaching that a workshop about that. I get excited about I love what I do, and it did ruin my life, and it made my life amazing and beautiful. And so I don't know, that's where I'm at. So that was pivotal. And then I would say several other things coming out of this controlling, crazy, male dominant, misogynistic. Aren't all the religions that way? Just coming out of that and not really saying I had to have the courage. It was like I just had to get fed up.
Mm-hmm.
What a load of crap. I was gonna, hip height bullshit this stuff is. And that to me is the voice that women need. It is for us to rise up. We're more than half the population of the earth.
Yeah.
What is going on that we've allowed this? And I believe also what's happening on the earth is that she's rising up. She's fed up. She's giving us the strength and the power and the courage to do something different. And that instead of turning against each other as women, we need to set aside all these crazy differences, because those are differences that have been force-fed to us by the male dominant. Quit the differences, come together and reroot, rise up, and stop trying to fix things in the organizations, in the male organizations and the male politics and the male governments and the male religions. We don't need to fix that. We need to create something different. And I just get sometimes, well, that's why I'm irreverent. I'm opinionated. I'm argumentative. I'm a troublemaker, because I'll ask the questions or challenge women, because I think we need to be challenged. I really do believe that it's lovely to wear a pussy hat or something and dance in the street, but if you go home and you still have the misogynistic, male-dominated hatred that's in the household, it doesn't matter how often you dance in the street. You've got to make choices in your life, hard choices, to walk away from some of this stuff.
And I think that's really important. And I think you are a great model of this. Like, you have a fearlessness. I can hear it in the things that you're describing. And you also have a way to trust the things that you know to be true for yourself. But other women, they're still maybe developing that, or they sense it and they are trying to pursue that and have that courage as well. And so I'm curious, what were some of the main obstacles that you had to overcome? I mean, you talked a little bit about, really rejecting some of the things that maybe you grew up with, or, when you did make this big decision to really say yes to this thing that called you. What were some of those obstacles, and what were some of those things that sort of shaped and defined you on your path?
Yeah. I think the biggest obstacles, and I don't really see them as obstacles, it was more just a willingness to listen to all the voices. And every time that I would step forward a little bit, and then there would be, you can't do that, or all the, going to be punished, or you're going to be excluded, or I would just stop and say, thank you, I hear you. who does this serve? For me, that was a question that came up over and over again, because those kinds of things are not about us as women being served and acknowledged and recognized. It's about power over and control and enslavement. And I do, I understand. Yes, I did things really boldly, but there was always little steps along the way. And so just literally until last year, and that's only because of I had an accident that caused a lot of physical problems. I was still riding my motorcycle, and at age 56, because I decided, like, we're so taught that we need men. I don't need a man so I can ride on the back. It was just something that was the closest I could come to riding a dragon. That's because I like to ride the dragon. Okay, so I said, I've got the money and I'm certainly smart enough. So I took the test, skills test. This was in California. Got my license, got my endorsement. Never, other than riding around in the parking lot on this little Yamaha thing to pass my test, I never ridden a motorcycle before. So here I am, 56 years old, and I went to the Harley dealership and I bought the biggest, most expensive motorcycle that I could buy. Weighed almost 1,000 pounds, and it was beautiful and it was perfect. And then I looked at the salesman. We finalized it and said, I don't know how to get this home because I'd never ridden on the freeway. All I'd done is a little motorcycle in a parking lot. He said, we'll deliver it. I said, thank you very much. So I'm sharing this because I literally had to go out for days at a time and sit in the garage and just sit on it. Because that's all I could, and read the manual. And then one day I rode around the block and had to go home. And then I rode around the block twice the next day. So, and after that, so it was basically all, from 2000, it was winter of 2004 until last year. I owned 3 different motorcycles and I probably rode at least 50,000 miles, and most of it by myself. I went to Canada. I just did everything that I could. That was Ingrid, because I've always been that kind of like, I'm going to do something really different. But for me to sit with other women and to look at them and their fear and their hesitation, and to say, sometimes it's the biggest step you can do is to wear lipstick, for instance. It might be that a woman can come back to me and say, I went to the store and I bought a tube of lipstick and I put it on. And that's the equivalent of buying the motorcycle. It doesn't matter where we, how we express it or what we do. It's about our willingness to shift. And there's so many beautiful women I've worked with over the years. One woman I remember, very successful in a high-tech corporation, management position for many years. Life looked good, house, children, all the things, all the trappings that make it look good, but we know it's not. And I do an exercise with women, if you could, if you didn't worry about money and pleasing other people and having enough time, what would you do? And for me, my answers would be some grandiose big thing. And this woman looked at me and she said, I would take a bubble bath with candles and nobody would knock on the bathroom door and disturb me. Now, this is a woman that's probably making more money than her husband, living in a big fancy house, and absolutely this. And I said, okay, let's start with that. That was the biggest thing that she could do. And from that came eventually a trip she took by herself, and ultimately ending a marriage that was abusive and stagnating, and quitting the job. But that took like maybe 5 years or 6, 7 years. But to talk to women and to hear them say that the biggest thing that they could do is buy a tube of lipstick or take a bath. This is the grief that we live with. That's why I consider myself an elder, wise woman in the community. I can sit with you and hold that space and encourage you to take whatever step you need to take, which is just like this rising up. I mean, I love the imagery is when you put that seed in the ground, it's not the big tree that comes up overnight. It's just a little sprout. And we need to tend each other and water each other and maybe put a little stick beside the tree while it grows a little bit. That to me is, women look at me and say, oh, you did this and you did this. And yes, but it had to start with my willingness to walk away. And that's huge.
I think that's a really important thing. And I love the idea of the small thing that grows into the big thing, because a lot of the times, like, we can't necessarily see the end, as a reality for us, but maybe that one step or that next step or that next step. And then all of a sudden, like you said, we have transformed. We have made these big decisions. We've been willing to walk away. And I love that progression. And I like how it's okay to also have a more immediate, smaller need that can then become a bigger need as well.
Once thing changes, everything changes. That's, there's just that, and we need each other to hold a space and hold hands, or to, just say, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. I agree with you with everything you say. And rising up is the most important thing that we need to do right now in our lives, in every step. Like, even to rise into our femininity, even women forgotten that part of themselves. They think feminine is the add-on stuff. But femininity is something like you, when it's, at 56, you were a rebel and you were a troublemaker and you like, I'm just going to get on a motorcycle. It doesn't matter how masculine it is. But the feminine part, what I saw in it is that, well, great, if you can deliver it, that would be amazing. That dichotomy of us getting on a bike and I don't know how to ride it. Oh, we're going to, deliver it for you. To me, that is so powerful, because that's the balance that a lot of us women, we need to get to. So it seems like you found it around, that age, of you getting the bike and also, allowing the guy to deliver the bike. Is it any other time that you felt like your femininity was in that kind of balance, or you've been feeling it for a while now? Or can you open up a little bit and tell us on that?
Well, I don't see us, I don't see humans as, we'll just stay with women. I don't see that it's necessary for us as women to divide masculine and feminine. I think we do a disservice to ourselves. And that's perpetuated in this belief that the left side is feminine and the right side is masculine. And that we're whole. And I believe that the only way we can come back to balance is to stop making that distinction of this is a feminine act and this is a female act and a male act. So I would say I lived my life that way. In part, I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers. My brothers were born when I was teenage. All of us girls were teenagers when my mother had these boys. And my father was a contractor, general contractor, and he raised us to do work like boys. And so I grew up knowing that there wasn't a division. He would take us out on construction sites and teach us how to drive the truck and hammer nails and all those kinds of things. And I never thought of myself as being divided. This is masculine, this is feminine. So I encourage using language differently about what was present was a wholeness for me, in that saying, this is something I can do and this is something I can't do. So who wants to help me? And I believe that served me well, because so often in the religion, it was the men that got all the, praise, and they're in the positions of power. But what I had observed was that they couldn't do what they were doing unless they had their women behind them. I mean, my father wasn't he didn't even finish high school. He was a really beautiful, brilliant man. But he did the things he did in the church because my mother wrote the speeches, or my mother did the work. So I grew up watching that lie. It's like, oh, okay, they need us. And it's not that we're smarter. It's just we have different abilities, and they like to pretend that we're not doing it. So that was part of my rebellion and feistiness, because I would call it out sometimes. It's like, no, that this is a lie. It's what allowed me to tolerate and navigate a lot of the things that went on in my marriage and raising my children, and then finally getting, taking steps to kind of be independent. And I also think that this is important. I don't use the words divine feminine, divine masculine, because to me there's an infected undercurrent there that's implying that there's a feminine that isn't divine, or and that's perpetuation of this whole belief that our bodies are earthly, and they're corrupt, and they're unclean, and they're less than the spiritual, and that divinity is somehow makes the female or the male, makes them okay. But there isn't anything other than female or feminine. It's everything. It's all of our human, earthly messiness. Women are messy. We're birthers. I don't know if anybody that's ever had a baby. It's like they come out with a lot of blood and water and piss and poop. We're messy. We drip. We bleed. And this is the wholeness. I don't need to say that that's divine. That's just being a female. And so that to me is kind of coming at life from a different way. It's like, no, I'm the mother bear. She births her cubs. She nurses them, she tends them, and she comes out of the cave, and she will fight to the death against a male to protect her young. That's not because she's female or she's being male. It's because she's being whole. And that, as women I think need to remember, in nature, we take care of our young, but if there's something wrong with them, there's a lot of animals in nature, they eat their young, or they push them out of the nest, or they push them out of the bed to die, because we bring forth life, which is what the earth does. And at the same time, everything we bring forth dies. So we are also the mothers, the birthers of death. And we need to understand that's the power that we hold. We can birth, and we birth death, and we can take life away. This is what makes us, the female, different than the male, because they can kill us, they can take our children, they can take away our names, they can do all sorts of things, but the thing they can't do is they can't birth. They can be as powerful as they want, but we have a power that's different in the female body, the ability to bring forth, and that's what connects us to the earth. Whether as women we choose that or don't choose that, that's irrelevant. It's just that that's the form, and that's the life and death aspect of us. And we don't need to divide that out. That's a whole. To me, that's the whole female. That's the whole woman. That's the wholeness of who we are, is that when we give birth to death. Because everything that comes out of our bodies eventually dies. And that's the same with the earth. Everything that comes out of the earth grows and flourishes and does its thing, and it returns. It goes back, it dies. So that to me is also woman arising, to realize this. We bring forth and it returns. And that's what I had written at the beginning in answer to the question is, what does it mean to be a woman? It means to be cyclical in a linear world, to recognize our cycles in a world that's dominated by men who think in terms of the beginning and the ending and at this straight line. No, we're just in this beautiful cycle, and you just get to come in and out of that story when you want. You can tell I'm passionate about my work.
Well, you're a very passionate woman about, what you teach and what you carry. And that's the part that I really appreciated in you when I first met you and sat and learned the ruins with you, because I really wanted to experience that, the very earthly kind of grounding energy that the ruins were bringing. Because I see you when you pick a ruin. I remember when you used to pick a ruin, you said, what is it saying to you? Forget the books, forget everything I've written. What is it saying to you? And you're kind of telling us that what we are of the earth, and we are birthing and dying at the same time. We give birth and death at the same time, and it's the cycle of that the women need to have. But the younger generation really has taken big step away from that. So how do you think we can bring the younger women to listen to the knowledge of that, of dying and, birthing and being a whole? What will be an advice from the younger generation that just beginning, they're just starting?
Well, for the young women, I think a lot of what the young people are doing today, which is probably what young people have always done, is there's this rebelliousness because they're frustrated, or they're unhappy, or they feel victimized, and so there's an extreme of going away, which is the way we grow up. It's like when you're a teenager, you know everything, and your parents don't know anything. I think that's kind of what's happening today with the young people. And for me, the way that we start is just coming back with little simple day-to-day things that all we need to have happen is for the electric grid to go down, for instance. I mean, we can see that happened in Europe recently, where, all the electricity goes down. We have young people who can't count money, don't know where the sun comes up, and couldn't find their way out of a paper bag if they had directions, right? Because they're so dependent upon technology that they have forgotten that the life we live today is the same as the life we lived before. We still are dependent upon the same thing. And no matter what we have that's technology, what we have that's our gadgets, our GPS and our Siri and all of that, it all comes from the earth. There's nothing that we're sitting here talking on these magic little computers, seeing each other on the screen. I don't know how that works, but everything here is from the earth. And if we disconnect from the earth, we've disconnected from the source of how life is. Even if you're going to go away to the Mars or the moon, it's like, okay, but you're going in a spaceship. It's made from the elements of the earth. And you're going to take food up there that comes from the earth. You can't get away from it. So for me, with the young people, is to challenge them. It's like, what is this about? What makes you, where is the disconnect? And that's where we've been cut off from the root. I think we have forgotten that the earth is the mother. And because we forget that, and I think that's been perpetuated by patriarchy, the misogynistic male dominant kind of ideology, that's what allows us to rape the earth. That's what allows us to take and take and take and take and never give anything back. We're takers, we're consumers. And when you poison the mother, she feeds you poison in return. When you use her as a toilet, she's going to flush. And that to me is what the young people we need not to be so gentle and tiptoeing around how we speak.
So it's stepping up into who we are 100%.
100%. And we don't need to push against that. We just need to stand to stand in the presence of a man and say, you know what, bow down. You're in the presence of she who gives birth. You came out of my body. There's no way around that. Stop believing the lie that, the God is male and forms things out of the earth, or Zeus has it coming out of his head, or somebody has it coming out of the armpit. It's like, no, 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 no. You lived inside my body, and you came out either through somebody cutting me open or between my legs. That's powerful. It's like the queen in the hive. She mates with the drones and they die. And the ones that didn't mate with her, they get kicked out of the hive. This to me is a woman arising, is to remember that we are connected to the earth in a way as the life bringers, and that the male, what I envision is the men who stop trying to control us and sexualize us, to stand in circle around us, to form a container of watchfulness, so that we in the center can birth these new things and birth a new way of being, and that they have to deserve to be in our presence. And that part of that job is that they are there to bring us the meat, so to speak, if we're lactating or gestating, not to control us, not to own us, not to name us, not to say, to have power over us. And in the old times, each fall, the incoming king of the land, for instance, in the Celtic tradition, he had to kiss the old woman. He had to kiss the hag in order to have the right to rule. And the significance of that is that the men today don't want to kiss the old woman. They want the young, sexy female. But if he didn't acknowledge the old woman, in most instances, he didn't have the right to rule, and he was put out of his misery, meaning they killed him. And if we just think about that today, it's like the men aren't willing to kiss the old woman. They want the sexual control of everything. But life doesn't come from that. Life comes from the willingness to accept the death. Because unless everything dies and returns to the earth, nothing new can grow. And so the unwillingness to acknowledge the wisdom of the old woman removes you from the right to rule. It's a very different way of looking at it.
It's fascinating. I've never heard that before. But I think that is absolutely fascinating, that you have to acknowledge that wisdom of the woman in order to take your place in that way. And I think, you touched on a lot of things in that, but I think one of the things that I keep hearing throughout it is this connection to the earth and to the power of being able to birth something, people, and that is sort of that divine energy around what it is that it truly has power in as being a woman. And I think that that's very important distinction to make that connection. And I'd love to hear, Zeffi asked you a little bit about what advice you'd give to women, but what advice do you wish you had gotten as a young woman that maybe would have been something that would have been powerful for you?
I wish that it had been modeled, that to have really seen more women that embraced and loved their bodies, that were taught about their bodily functions. I would say this I address in a different book, The Lost Teachings. I would say advice was for always stand in your own center. Always stand in the middle of your own life and look in all the directions and ask yourself, who am I? And that to be willing to say, where, maybe advice to ask more questions instead of just accept what's force-fed. Where in your life are you settling for less because you're afraid? Oh, who does this serve? Again, I'm going back to the Women of the Always book. In the beginning, I say the book started with a question that I asked. I remember so clearly. I was 8 years old, and I went to my father because we were always reading the Bible and all that. And I went to my father and I said, why don't a lot of the women in the Bible have names? That, to me, that was like a big deal. It's like, why don't, like Noah's wife, supposing that you're studying this and believing this, like she helped build the ark. She put the animals in. Why doesn't she have a name? And my dad was always really patient with me and my questions. And he said, well, Ingrid, that's just the way it is. And it's like, well, that's a stupid answer. Just, it's like, what happened to their names? So I think that this, for me, is to be a voice now for women, all women, even women that, you might be in your 50s, you might be in your 60s. It's time to ask questions and to stand in the center and look around and say, who am I? Why don't we have names? I mean, there's something just as simple as that. And, I mean, we're looking at globally these horrible situations that our sisters are in globally. Well, all people, children and so on, and the earth. And it's not that simple because a lot of the women put their lives at risk. If to do something to even talk like we are, they could be killed or will be killed. And so my life isn't in danger for me to say these things and ask questions. Your life isn't really in danger. Zeffi's life isn't. We have an obligation. Those of us who have the ways and means to do some of these things, we have an obligation to speak more forcefully, to ask the questions and to protect the women, protect the women as best we can, not by trying to rearrange the system, but by creating something different. And that comes from our rootedness. We need to root into the earth and allow her to nourish and feed us so that what's growing is connected. And the earth continues. It doesn't, she's in upheaval right now, but I think it's in response to her being abused.
Yeah. There's a lot of powerful things you're touching on, and that sense of that global community, and that we, as women, we are interconnected in lots of ways throughout the globe. And how do we support and uplift each other as much as we can? And it's really ties into what we're trying to do here at Women Arising, which is to connect women around the globe, to hear each other and to see ourselves in each other, and to understand that we're all walking on this journey, even though our paths may vary, that there is that interconnectedness and the power in that interconnectedness. And I like how, through what you're saying, the earth is that foundation of that connection between us all, and that great mother, in a sense, is the place that we derive our energy, our sustenance, our future from. And to and our power and how we can kind of really take some of those steps to ask those questions, because I think that's a really important thing, to be able to ask ourselves these questions so that we can grow, that we can expand, that we can reshape. I like that throughout the podcast you kept talking about how, there's a lot of these structures that were built up around some of these male-dominated perspectives, and that we've been trying to work within those and reshape them, but that really it's about creating these alternative structures and these alternative ways of being in the world so that we can really redefine in a very powerful way. And that some of that path is through connecting to the earth and asking these important questions. And I think that that's a great message for our listeners. It's been a true delight to have you here and hear all of the many different facets of your life experiences and philosophies. And I'd love for our audience to have a chance to know about how they might get in touch with you and work with you and some of the things that are on the horizon for you.
The best way to get in touch with me is my website, which is my name, ingridkincaid.com. It's really simple, so you can find me on the internet. You can email me at ingrid@ingridkincaid.com. I travel a lot, so I teach classes in different countries and different places. I'm always willing to go someplace and present something. I work in person in my home as well as virtually. I work with women in Australia, in New Zealand, South Africa, United States, Europe. There's lots of, because there's a need. And my book, The Women of Always book, will be on the website. It's a year-long course following the phases of the moon. 26 different topics relevant to women and necessary for men to hear also. So it's a woman-focused book, but there are a lot of men who have participated in some of the classes that are excited also to have it, to challenge some of their own ways of thinking. I have also, if you look on Amazon for books, you can find my rune books that are available there, and the runic wisdom, this old system of markings, which is earth balanced wisdom, is an underpinning. My ancestral wisdom from that place is an underpinning for the work that I do. And I offer year-long mentorship programs for women that want to really take little steps or big steps. We have to always be changing. And I would say, above all, ask more questions.
That's great.
Ask yourself, why did I say that? Why do I do that? Where did that come from? Who is that in service to? Ask more questions and stay home and do your work. We want to go out to all these other countries and fix problems, but we need to create community where we live. We need to be strong with each other, stop fighting with each other in the places where we live. And then from that, I can step forward and say something to you and encourage something because I'm willing to live it at home.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's a great thought to end our podcast on today. And I hear the theme of asking more questions because it's true. That's really the beginning of that inquiry and that shift and that change and that way of seeing the world from our own perspective. Thank you so much, Ingrid. It's been terrific to hear from you today. And we're really honored that you joined us on our podcast. I know.
Thank you so much for providing this.
Thank you, Ingrid, too. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to Woman Arising, where we celebrate the resilience, wisdom, and power of women on the rise. Remember, when women rise, we all rise. If you're ready to embark on your journey of empowerment, Sign up for our mailing list at womenarising.com and join our community of strong, inspiring women. To connect with Zeffi Devi and ignite your inner fire, visit zeffidevi.com and sign up to get your free tantric meditation. Let Zeffi illuminate your path, helping you discover the magic and power that reside within you. To connect with Cathy Hartenstein and claim your spectacularness, visit createmorebliss.com and sign up for a free 30-minute consult call where she can help you break through your emotional blocks to success. Let Cathy be your guide on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Thank you for being a part of the Women Arising community. Together, let's continue to uplift, inspire, and empower women everywhere. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and keep embracing the divine feminine power that resides within you.
You are the Holy Grail, the Magdalene. Woman, no need to search any longer.